Welcome to The Beat. I'm Ari Melber. I hope you had a wonderful holiday weekend. We have a lot of news with everything kicking back off on this Monday evening. More states certifying their election results. Arizona locking in Joe Biden's win as Donald Trump's legal team urged the state to simply overturn the results, which continues this string of baseless voter fraud claims they've made that have gone relatively nowhere. Donald Trump also has a brand new Fox interview where he, yes, lies about the election.
They say that I was doing so much better than they thought that they panicked and they started just doing ballot after ballot very quickly and just checking the Biden name on top. They're voting for dead people. They found ballots under rocks that had the name Trump on.
Is the DOJ investigating?
Missing in action. Can't tell you where they are. Yeah, I would consider a special prosecutor.
He would, but he won't. The president does not personally hire special prosecutors to investigate elections where there's no underlying criminal fraud. And as we've reported, the door to that was already shut when Attorney General Bill Barr, who's been quite loyal to Trump and was, of course, his appointee, said they didn't see any evidence of voter fraud, let alone the kind of evidence to conduct an entire special prosecution. Now, the president has trouble grasping some of these basic facts as we're in a serious transition time. The Washington Post reporting he's been, quote, brooding out of public view after his election defeat, rageful, and at times, and this is the Washington Post's word, quote, delirious. Meanwhile, an ousted senior cybersecurity official, Chris Krebs, making news, telling CBS that Donald Trump's legal team's actions are now, at this point, becoming a potential danger to United States democracy.
As you watched Rudy Giuliani's news conference at the Republican National Committee headquarters, what were you thinking?
It was upsetting because what I saw was an apparent attempt to undermine confidence in the election, to confuse people, to scare people. What it was actively doing was undermining democracy. That's dangerous.
Again, that is an official who served in the administration. All of this comes as President-elect Biden is going forward, building his team. We have more on that later in the program. He also received his first presidential daily briefing on intelligence today, and he's making history in some other ways that we're going to get into. Plus, I have a special report later tonight. So we think it's a big Monday night, but we want to go right to our experts right now. MSNBC contributor Jason Johnson, a professor, and Juanita Tolliver, national political director for Super Majority. Good to see you both.
Hey, Ari.
Hey.
Good to see you, Ari.
Good to see you. Juanita, you take it all together, and the transition has continued to move forward. So this looks a lot more like a story of political grievance and denial than something that's affecting the transition. And yet at the same time, we just showed that clip because that's a serious person with a serious job saying that, again, this is his words, not mine. His job was to worry about misinformation from around the world or bubbling up on the internet, and yet the danger was coming from inside the White House.
Literally, Ari, the call is coming from inside the House. Like, the potential threat to our democracy is coming from the occupant of the White House. And I think it further shows Trump's continuous disregard for pillars of institutions in our country, as well as the will of the voters. He's literally upset because voters in this country chose Biden and not him. And this is his ongoing temper tantrum that's, again, wasting millions of dollars in resources, going before and failing in front of judge after judge after judge. And he's going to continue to keep doing this. What I do appreciate is that this temper tantrum is juxtaposed with the Biden-Harris transition team explicitly laying the foundation, naming nominees, and getting ready to hit the ground running the day after the inauguration. So I think the American public, it needs to be watching that with bated breath, but also take into consideration the long-standing impact that this tantrum from Trump, these frivolous claims are going to have on the impact of our democracy.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, I hate to be simplistic, but if you've ever been around children or siblings growing up, you're familiar with the silent treatment. There's a school.
I have been on the receiving end of that as a younger sibling. Yes.
Respect. So there's a school of thought that because Donald Trump is the loser of the race, that's just a fact, and that because there's just these sort of dwindling tiny desk style tantrums, that you could give him entirely the silent treatment. And I wonder what you think about that politically. Journalists and the press have to figure out how they fairly cover things, including sometimes things that are lies. Do you fact check? Do you ignore? Case by case. But I wonder what you think politically about that, because I'm about to show Senator Blunt here, a top Republican, echoing the misinformation in a way that suggests the silent treatment alone may be insufficient if you have to confront a Republican Party that wants to play this out long term. Take a look.
Do you accept the fact that Joe Biden is the president-elect of the United States?
Well, we're certainly moving forward as if that's what's going to happen on January the 20th. The president wants to see this process play out. The president-elect technically has to be elected president by the electors. That happens in the middle of December.
I'll do the obvious part, and then you could do the more interesting part, since I'm anchoring. What the senator said was technically true, but complete trash. And the reason is he has been a part of many other election processes. And he's never spoken this way before, and no other top Republicans have spoken this way. So while it is technically true, and I wouldn't call him a, quote, liar for that, it's trash because this isn't how any other president was dealt with. This is some sort of special, ridiculous misinformation for the benefit of this departing chief executive. Jason, your view.
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? So we can take this back to Chris Krebs' interview. I thought it was a great interview, and he said, hey, look, well, we have paper ballots. You know, I'm here to clear information. And yes, it's great. We got that paper trail, so Trump can do whatever he likes, right? But here's the problem. The president just doing whatever he likes leads to Republicans acting the same way and sharing information and sharing misinformation throughout the country and attacking people and applying pressure. And here's the thing, Ari, the reason that this is dangerous, not just in a political sense, but why it's a real danger to our democracy, is just like, you know, this has happened in tons of movies, right? You hire the former thief to try and break into your house to see how many different ways where the weaknesses are. Every single time that Republicans enable Trump to engage in these ridiculous lawsuits, somebody smart out there is looking at weaknesses in our system, is looking at weaknesses in our judiciary, is looking at weaknesses and holes and gaps and loopholes. So following this and engaging in this kind of information simply clears the pathway for somebody smarter to try these sorts of stunts further on, when there isn't going to be an election that takes place during a pandemic where we'll have paper trails where we can try to stop this kind of nonsense. So it's incredibly dangerous. It is anti-democratic. And I think as journalists, and I'm glad you mentioned this, I think as journalists, it's important to know that, look, what the president's doing is corrupt. It is a violation of democracy, but it is also a warning for what the incoming administration has to be aware of when the next elections come around.
All very fair. Was that a reference to a T.I. song as well slipped in there?
Either that or Joey, yeah.
He came to play. He's ready. Juanita.
I can't say the last name on TV, but you know.
Juanita, I want to put up one other item, which goes to the political valence, the salience of these different leaders, because there's this fear of Trump, obviously, still in parts of the party. Very simply, Biden's favorability at this juncture could obviously change depending on how he does as president. But you have Americans here. That's a pretty big gap because the president, whatever one thinks of him, is still enjoying the trappings and the respect of the presidency. And Biden is doing something now. Again, if he falls and crashes, I'll report that too, Anita. But right now, he's doing something that Donald Trump never did in 4 years, which is have an actual majority favorability rating.
You know, the other thing that Biden's doing that Trump absolutely hasn't done yet, he's laying a foundation to respond to COVID-19. A pandemic that has claimed 267,000 Americans, that Trump, instead of dealing with that, instead of focusing on relief and aid that he can provide to American families, has instead bailed out corporations and then focused all his energy and intention on this election and these unfounded claims. So Trump has demonstrated that he's not here for the American public. Instead, what Biden is doing is already developing that rapport. He did it on the campaign trail. He's doing it now as he sets up his transition team and names nominees, that he is going to be here for the American public in a way that Trump never was.
All important, and I appreciate the substantive reference on the COVID planning. We have something very special coming up on that. I want to thank Juanita, who comes back later in the hour. Jason Johnson, thank you as well. We have our shortest break now, 30 seconds, but coming up, how Donald Trump spent millions of dollars that actually increased Biden's margin. The special report I mentioned, it's about why there's hope with the COVID vaccine. It's about history's lessons and why medical experts say Trump's failure